Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche Season and Player Previews, the final episode going over the Colorado Avalanche top 6, the big guns. It's time to talk about them. I don't know how to do the
not
noise.
air horns. Those were just lasers.
Oh, you're just lasers? Okay.
Yeah, because you said big guns.
And they're sniping. Got it.
Yeah.
Math adds up. I get it now. Look, I don't think the top players on the Colorado Avalanche are particularly complicated conversations. You're expecting them to come in. Oh, dude, you actually have laser sound effects? That's sick.
Lasers there.
Let's go.
Ooh, that sounded like
That's Double Jeopardy.
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah,
it is Double
yeah.
Jeopardy. It is.
I almost said Double Dare.
Also a great game show, to be fair.
Double Dare 2000. Just let it stop.
Let's start at the top. Nathan MacKinnon, the dude's an absolute stud. Everybody knows it. He's come into this season as motivated as ever. One question, do we think he hits the 100-point mark this year?
With scoring being up in the NHL in general, I do. I think this is the year he does it. He looks like he's on a bit of a different level.
Yeah. Agreed. Everyone else?
Yep.
Agreement?
Yeah. Like, Kiefer Sherwood's scoring goals. So, McKinnon's definitely hitting 100 points.
The most backhanded way.
I know. I was like, this was really mean. That's why I held my tongue. I was
2
like,
points. 2 points for Kiefer Sherwood.
That's not very nice.
Scoring
I don't
goals
mean it.
and picking up multiple points.
Look, sky's the
bad.
You do
limit.
mean it. It's all right.
Sky's the limit for Nathan MacKinnon, obviously. The best case scenario is he wins every award in the NHL and rides off into starting his next contract as the best player in the world. There's no real doubt about that. The worst case scenario, again, we've refrained from using injury as often as possible in this series, but the only thing that can really derail Nathan MacKinnon is something that seriously jeopardizes his next contract, basically. If he is limited on a $12.6 million deal, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, I think those are fair best case, worst case.
Yep.
Because the tip top of his game, he just takes home that hardware.
Yep.
You know, the awards ceremony is basically just him going up and awkwardly trying to give multiple acceptance speeches.
It's funny because everyone talked about now that he has a cup, is he going to be less intense, less himself, whatever.
I think it's ramped up.
I think it's ramped up.
I agree.
And I think the pressure is off.
For sure.
And then now it's just pure competitive fire and drive.
Pressure is down, intensity is up.
Yep.
Yeah.
I fully agree. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And just watching him in the one preseason game he played, and then just seriously through camp. Again, you don't put too much stock into camp, but we've been watching Nathan MacKinnon for long enough now that you can tell when his play has ramped up. And he does. He looks ready to go. And when I talked to him at the start of camp, he said a lot of that was like, look, I feel like I'm still just playing at the level that I was a couple months ago. And you see teams do this. Like, that's part of the reason why in recent years we've seen a couple teams repeat. It gets harder to do that after going that deep a couple years, 2-3 years in a row. But I think he's still got that intensity ramped up. I think he's got, the weight off his back. And I think he's primed for a big, big year.
Okay. Next up, we want to talk about the guy who's not going to be in the lineup to start the season. The captain himself, Gabe Landeskog. Look, we don't really have a timeline still on his injury, so it's not exactly clear, but obviously a key piece to the Avs organization, especially over the last handful of years. He's had a couple of seasons where he's pushed beyond a point-per-game pace. How critical is Landy getting back as soon as possible for the Avs, or can he take his time?
It's not critical at all. He does not need to play a single regular season game for the Avalanche before January.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with AJ. Look, he's the emotional heartbeat of that room, but there's enough of a culture built around that he's still around. He's talking to the guys. He's at the facilities. So you're not necessarily missing that part of it. And also, look, there's very little turnover on this team. Yeah, he's the emotional heartbeat, but this is a team that they're 2 months removed from a Stanley Cup championship. Mm-hmm. That room kind of runs itself at this point. And I'm with AJ. You want him back as healthy as possible. There's zero reason to rush him back. You trust your team. You trust your process. You don't need to rush anything with a key player. With a player as important as he will be come playoff time again in their race to defend this. You just want him as healthy as possible. They kept him out of practices. They kept him out of morning skates in the playoffs so that you could get as close to 100% Landy for the games. And that's all that matters.
Yep.
So let's say he plays roughly 60 games this season, just as an estimate. Megan, what is a realistic expectation for his production this year?
You said 60 games?
60 games.
I think he's hovering around a point per game. Like half point to a point, somewhere like a little higher than a half point per game, probably just under a point per game. And a lot of it has to do with the line mates that he was playing against too. And I just wanted to, on the previous conversation about rushing him back, I also agree that I don't think there's any urgency because I think Nathan MacKinnon really likes playing hockey with Lehkonen. Yeah. So I don't think there's any need to have Landeskog return to the lineup too soon either.
If you get 60 games out of him, if you could get a 20-30 season out of him, I think you're thrilled.
The best case I put on there was a 30-30 year if he really pops off and he hits that 30-goal mark again, which he has a few times lately.
It really sucks that he keeps getting like his career years, his best
cut
seasons
short,
are always cut short by something.
Yeah,
and then we're not just getting a healthy like Gabe Landeskog season where you just get to see this guy put up the kind of because now like Gabe Landeskog and especially if they do win, say, another Stanley Cup, maybe 2 more, Gabe Landeskog would be like
legendary status.
Well, that guy where you start to wonder, like,
how great could it have
been? Could he push for the Hall of Fame? Right. Could he maybe get in, with some international accomplishments along the way? Can he get in as the captain of a dynasty? And if he does have point per game seasons, things like he would need numbers.
Yep.
To really get better because the first several years of his career were good, just not to that level. And his numbers have taken that jump to a different level the last couple of years where he has been point per game a little bit better than point per game, 30-goal seasons where you're starting to be like, well, he's starting to put up some of these seasons now where because retiring his number and having that go up into the rafters, that's done.
Yeah.
That's done.
Well, yeah.
He could never play another game for the Avalanche, and that's done. But that is one where selfishly I'm just like, I want to see him continue to put up some 30-goal seasons and so put up some numbers where maybe he can chase down if he can stay if the longevity is there. Maybe he can just chase that fringe Hall of Fame
get
status.
The Jonathan Taves path to the Hall of Fame.
and be the captain of a generation defining core.
So you mentioned the number retirement thing, and I'm going to say something here that may sound a little silly at face value, but it lumps in with what you're talking about of how big can he build this legacy, especially here in Colorado, let alone league wide. And again, this is going to sound silly when I say it, but stick with me. When you look at the numbers that they've retired. Joe Sakic, Patrick Waugh, Peter Forsberg, Adam Foote, Milan Hajduk.
Mm-hmm.
3 of those guys were captains of this organization at one point. And there is one jersey up there, one banner that has the Avs captaincy on it. And it's Joe Sakic's because of the legacy that he built as a captain.
Joe Sakic.
Right. And to that point, I genuinely do think that with how Gabe Landeskog's career is trending, if he could win a couple more cups, that could be another one that when they retire that number, he would have that kind of legacy that he would also get that
on there
seat.
anyway.
Yep.
I think it goes on there anyway.
So?
But yeah. But I mean, he's just earned that as the face and as the emotional like heartbeat of this group, and given what they've gone through, the ups and downs, everything that they've gone through, I just think that.
And like I said, I know that sounds maybe like superficial, but I do think that means something for an organization that to acknowledge this is a leader of this organization. Are you laughing at me?
No, I'm laughing that it's moving day.
Oh, your phone. And again, I do just think that would be a sign of the legacy and symbolic for the Avs, the organization, and Gabe himself.
Very quickly, you guys kind of already covered the worst case scenario. There's literally zero reason to bring him back before he's 100%. Don't let any lingering stuff go on there.
Yep.
Wait. Once he's ready, bring him back and let him.
This recovery is already the result of him rushing back for the start of the playoffs last year, which obviously worth. But
worked out.
No need to compound it. No need to make it a lingering, ongoing issue with the knee. Just let him come back and do his thing.
Yep. Then the third part of the 3-headed monster, Mikko Rantanen. A bit divisive at times, but an unbelievable player at its core. Megan, how you feel about Mikko coming into the year?
It's hard to critique Mikko because what he does well pretty consistently, but it's just his identity as a player to sometimes be a little bumbly, and I think people are really hard on him for that too. Like, what he does in setting up plays is so important for that top line, and I think he's going to be a huge contributor there yet again. But there's just little lapses sometimes that I think people are hard on him on, or periods where he gets a little less visible that people are really hard on him for. And he shows up in big moments, and that's why we love Mikko Rantanen. So
we're right here.
The craziest part about Mikko Rantanen, and I think the best sign of just how elite of a player this actually is, you're right. He can disappear. You can go multiple stretches without seeing him. You're like, what has Mikko Rantanen been doing? Oh, 2 points per game over the last 7 games. Cool. Never mind. I know nothing. Like, he finds
22 points over his last 5 games. Yeah, AJ, he's really disappeared a lot.
Right. And it's like, that's the part that's just such a sign of a truly elite player, that he can play bad games and yet he's in on the game time goal and the game winning goal. And you're like,
and that's okay. That's the frustrating thing, though. Our best case scenario, I believe Mikko Rantanen could be an MVP caliber player.
Absolutely.
If he puts it all together and plays a consistent game.
Yep.
We see him drift into I don't want to call it laziness because I don't think that's what it is, but maybe coasting a little bit at times because he can get away with it.
Right.
Disengages.
Yeah.
Because he's just that good.
Yeah.
Because he's just that good.
Yeah, and there was a point in his career where there was a crossroads where it was, I can put all of this talent together and combine it with a relentless work ethic, or I can figure out how to pick my spots and try and stay a little healthier for the long run and not go all out all the time. Yep. Because I do think that the year where, he only played the 41 games, or I think it was 44 games, and he had 41 points.
That was a rib injury coming into the playoffs, too.
I think that was the year where he kind of decided, because of that season, he needs to take it easier at times. Mm-hmm. Because we didn't really see him coast through postseason games. I mean, we saw a frustrating version of him at times, but we didn't see him do like the silly stuff,
Right.
For the most part, I mean, there was that one turnover that will always just frustrate me against Edmonton, but it was fine. It's just that he's so supremely talented that I feel like we're always going to be wanting a little bit and saying, what if he did put all of this together?
Right.
What if he went all out every night? What if he had Nathan MacKinnon's intensity? Mm-hmm. What if he had that passion and that fire that burned in the same way? It's not that he doesn't. I was gonna say, yeah. It's not that he doesn't. It's just how they go about it, right? Well, Nate constantly seeks to elevate his game. And I don't think that the same is true of Mikko, where Mikko is just like, I'm going to do my thing, and then, I'm just happen to be supremely talented.
The angry versions of those players is the perfect example, right? Angry Nate is a beast. Angry Mikko's about to do something stupid.
Angry Mikko ends up in the penalty box.
Yeah.
Well, and
because he just two-handed somebody.
You bring up an interesting point, though, because he is the type of guy that you could see just having 15 straight 95 to 100 point seasons.
Yeah. He could have a Nikita Kucherov 120 some odd point season where he's just locked in for an entire year and completely dominates.
Yeah.
He is on a Hall of Fame track right now in his career.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just that good. And you make an interesting point, because it'll be interesting to see, because if he can stay healthy, relatively healthy, then you say, okay, he made the trade-off, and it's paid off.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
He made the right call. I don't want to paint it so black and white, but you know what I mean? Like, the way he goes about it makes sense because he can stay in the lineup. He can stay healthy. He can contribute, 80 games a year or whatever.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Well, that's what you want.
So, Megan, you were talking about having him on the top line. Are you hard sticking him next to MacKinnon there? Or we've heard talk about, depending on how other things go, they could play him at 2C. We could see some mixing of that top 6. Are you comfortable with that, or do you just Mac and Mikko together, set and forget?
It's not set and forget for me, just because with the return of Landeskog. what they do with Lehkonen, for example, and then what becomes of that second line. I could see Rantanen also serving a purpose there. And depending on who is driving it, like if it is Newhook at 2C, which I really do want to see, then I could see that being an added bonus to Newhook's line if Rantanen's playing there on wing. So it's not set for me just because of the talent that MacKinnon is specifically. He can play alongside a couple different personnel and still succeed. So I don't mind Biko getting different looks either, especially if it benefits someone like Newhook.
That combination of Nate, Gabe, and Val in the final last year was just so good that I'm with you. If you could strap a Mikko next to a guy like Newhook, give him a little bit of an offensive boost, give him someone to kind of not only distribute pucks to, but kind of another trigger man on that line. I'm with you. I think that we're going to see Jared Bednar try some stuff, and he should.
So you guys are kind of drifting into my next question. Assuming health, how much do we actually see of the three-headed monster this year?
I don't think very much.
And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, good, bad. I don't care because I think the top six is talented and versatile enough at this point that it's no longer the crutch that it used to be.
Right.
They just don't need it.
Well, and that's why I say I think
you'll
it's a good
see
thing.
it.
Yeah.
I think you'll see it when they're down by one.
Yep. Offensive zone face-offs. Yeah.
They're
Was that you?
I also didn't understand that. No, I think that I think it'll be like a situational thing only and not a game to game. Just throw them out there in waves, end of the first period kind of thing, where you have an offensive zone face off or something and you're less worried about the 200-foot game. You take a Nichushkin off, you put a Landeskog on. Cool. Something like that.
Well, and it's fun because you have three, in my opinion, truly elite offensive forwards. And just anytime you can spread that out.
Yeah, it benefits the entire lineup, right?
Right.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind as we move into the guys that we've kind of loosely labeled as second line. Certainly with Landy out, a number of these dudes are going to get first line time. And even after that, there's going to be some shuffling. The first dude on that list, as we've already mentioned, Nathan MacKinnon's best buddy, Arturi Lehkonen, signed that new deal with the Avs, joined the Avs to be in their top six. And can he live up to the hype now is the question.
I'm trying to keep my expectations for Arturi Lehkonen on planet Earth. But the way that he fits in Colorado, the way that he fits into the system, and the way that he fits alongside Colorado Stars, the things that he does well.
This is it right here.
He fills the perfect gaps in their games. The way that he forechecks, the way that he attacks, the way that he goes to the net and is this like super quiet chaos king, because he just wreaks havoc on opposing defenses and their structure, their setup, everything. Arturi Lehkonen is a little maniac over there, and he's so quiet and unassuming about it that it's almost like he's going to get lost in the shuffle. But I think that him being your fifth or sixth guy is just going to be so problematic, and where you lose some skill from Andre Burakovsky to Arturi Lehkonen, you gain just that hard-nosed grit, that hard to play against, that attacking style as I bite my tongue. And I just think that Lehkonen's overall fit into the lineup. He may not produce the 61 points that they got out of Burakovsky last year, but they're going to be better and more well-rounded in all three zones. And also he can be a great PK guy if you want him to be.
Well, so by the time this episode drops, it will have been last week that we talked about our Stanley Cup tiers, and a couple of the teams. We mentioned a few teams that was like, man, it seems like they seem to be able to churn out high-end players and really elevate them. And at a certain point, you step back and say, all right, are they finding guys that fit in well systematically? And we've seen many examples of that with the Avs over the last couple of years through waivers and whatever. Their pro scouting finds these guys that just really fit in well. And I think AJ hit the nail on the head. Arturi Lehkonen is a guy who's a couple tiers above some of those guys they've kind of brought in as reclamation. Can they fit? And then he just fits so well. So he's already a couple steps ahead of those guys. And everything that he does well is everything that Jared Bednar and the Avs coaching staff is asking for their players to do well. He seems like he gels with their top guys, Nathan MacKinnon in particular.
What is it about Arturi Lehkonen that Nathan MacKinnon loves so much?
Bro, I would love. I'd actually love to know because you saw it starting a little bit last year in the playoffs with the way he talked about him, and now they're very close. He straight up beat whoever that was, Colin Miller the other night, like straight up beat him up because he was shoving Arturi Lehkonen a little bit.
Like he physically engaged with Arturi Lehkonen, and MacKinnon turned around and was like, "No, no,
full back to the play. Like this is all I care about."
Yeah. You will not touch him.
and it's just
major Big Brother energy.
Major
Big Brother energy.
And again, like that means something. That does mean something in a room like this.
Guys playing for each other is how you win a Stanley Cup.
Yep.
Megan, I'm going to make you play the pessimist on this one. How does this go wrong?
A classic Megan role to play.
Yeah.
I don't. Honestly, it's if he remains about the same offensively, because I think there's room for him to take a step forward with the opportunity that he's going to have now for the full length of a season in Colorado. He's has a much more elevated role in Colorado than he did in Montreal. If he doesn't take a step forward offensively, I'll have some concern just because of the talent that he'll be playing alongside. I'm still slotting him in somewhere in the top 6. It's going to be really hard to justify if he takes a step backwards or remains about the same.
Yeah, you really don't want to be spending $4.5 million on a guy that ends up on your third line.
Yeah, exactly. for a good defensive guy.
Yep. Yeah, like I think that's the worst case scenario is that he does not stick in your top 6 and he ends up on your third line next to Ben Myers and JT Compher.
This
and
can't be $1 million more expensive. JT
Compher. That's a fun line, you know. You put it on paper and you're like, oh,
it's a great third line.
It's kind of a fun and frisky third line, you know? But that's not what you think you're getting when you gave him a 5-year deal and doubled his salary.
Now the other thing,
really not what you thought you were getting.
The other thing, too, in addition to the PK, they have really liked him on the power play, and Jared Bednar said, come opening night, he will be the bumper guy on PP1. Yep. So, again, just more offensive opportunity.
Well, and that's where when Landeskog comes back, he's probably the sacrificial lamb and drops down to the second unit.
Yep.
But plays the same exact role in the second unit.
Right.
Because that's where, I'm telling you, he's a little chaos master.
You don't think that maybe he'd stick even when Landy comes back?
I mean, it would be Lehkonen or Nichushkin.
Yeah, I think
for me
probably stays.
For me, they are. I believe
pretty interchangeable.
We'll talk about that other guy in just a second. So
yeah, let's do it.
Actually, we're going to the guy in the middle, and let's face it, the Avs do have some production that they lost over the offseason. Newhook is the guy you're hoping replaces a significant portion of that.
Going from an 80-point guy to a 30-point guy. Big question mark. Yeah.
The Avs need Newhook.
Yeah.
As at this point, it looks pretty locked in that he's going to get the real opportunity at 2C.
At least to start, yeah.
Yeah. And he has to excel in that role.
Well, and I think that's where you feel good because, again, I'll keep mentioning it until this season starts and he's officially into his second season. He was a rookie last year, and I think you like that production. He was hovering around 15 goals.
Man, nothing wrong with a 33-point rookie season.
No way.
Especially when you're playing 13 minutes a night and you're in a bottom 6 job.
Right.
Girl, please.
When you are strapped, and this isn't a shot at JT Compher or anything like that, but they're not the same offensive finishers that he's going to get the chance to play with.
Yeah, Nicholas Aube-Kubel was on his right wing for a
long time. And you mentioned earlier, if you start putting Mikko Rantanen on that wing with Alex Newhook, that production is just going to be an automatic little bump.
Yeah, you have Arturi Lehkonen and Mikko Rantanen flanking you. You should probably produce more than 33 points.
Just a bit. But look, we had him on the show last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. He seems confident.
Had him on the show?
Yeah. He seems confident. He seems ready. And he seems like he trusts his ability this year, and he doesn't have that same, not fear of being a rookie, but that's intimidating. He got sent down at the beginning of the year.
Uncertainty
is a great word for it. And I just feel like he's got that little extra vote of confidence from everyone. And to me, again, it's preseason, it's training camp. Do not put too much stock into it. But when you're talking about just the way a guy looks on the ice, you can see the confidence, I think, for Newhook.
I think, too, that's where my worst case scenario is forged, is he's so young and he demonstrates so much maturity. The only way I could see this really going wrong for him is if somewhere along the way he lost confidence in himself. And that could be something, too, if he doesn't immediately live up to the 2C position at the start of the season. If that began to harm his confidence in his play, that would be the worst case scenario for me.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I'm looking at it as a win-win. If he doesn't live up to the hype, the Avs get him cheaper on his next deal. So can't go wrong with that.
That's where you're hoping for the 7 years for $2 million.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You could be a late bloomer.
But as far as the Avs push this season, look, does regular season performance matter that much? As long as they get in the playoffs, not really.
It is a building block, though,
Right.
for a guy like Newhook, where he needs, a good regular season means opportunity in the postseason, which he didn't have much of last year. They got into the postseason. He was a healthy scratch for
a
Nashville
lot
series.
of it. Yeah.
He's a healthy scratch, and then when he did play, he was playing.
And that's why I feel
9,
confident.
10 minutes a night,
Yep.
and that's where a good regular season. That's not the conversation surrounding
right.
Alex Newhook. The conversation is, how are the Dallas Stars or whoever in the first round
deal with him?
gonna
Yeah.
stop Alex Newhook?
And again, going back to what he said on the show last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, it is because of those healthy scratches and the low minutes in the playoffs that I feel like he is ready to take that next step, because he had to battle through that mentally. He told us, like, I've never been scratched before. I've never been healthy.
He's not looking to live that life.
Right. And the fact that he was able to battle through that, and then still when he came back to the lineup, be an effective player, especially at a young age, to be able to deal with that adversity, I think that'll bode well for him this year.
And he has plenty of steadying presences around him. We already mentioned Lehkonen. Add Val Nichushkin to that list as a guy who is arguably the best player at his position defensively.
You think so?
Top 3 for sure.
For who?
Val.
I think he's very
At his at wing. I'd even give him both wings. I think he's probably top 3.
I think he's very, very good.
Okay.
Is he next?
He is next.
He is next.
So Val is one that it is critical for the Avs to continue to get the production that they got out of him last season. They made the huge commitment to him, and
Huge
8-year
huge commitment to him.
north of $6 million contract.
I thought it would be lesser AAV with the term. It was the fact that he got the term and the AAV were the part that were
This is an anti-Jason Robertson.
that were just so surprising to me, and warrants the word huge to be said a handful of times.
Huge.
But look, he played in his first preseason game back the other night, and look, you can only judge him based off of what we've seen. That jump looks like it's there. We saw him drive the net really, really hard at the end of the first period, and then a couple more times throughout the game. He's another guy. We said he's very similar to Lehkonen. I just think he thrives in this system. Everything that he does well is what they are looking for him to do well, and it puts him in situations to produce offensively. And I'm a big believer in Val Nichushkin going into this year. It's a huge commitment. You need the production to stay. But I think he's got all the tools in this system to become a bona fide staple on that top 6, maybe even the top line. We already mentioned it. That top unit of Landeskog, MacKinnon, Nichushkin was an absolute nightmare for the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions in the final. And I don't see why, once Landy is back healthy, that you just don't go back to that. And suddenly you're running that line followed by a line that features Mikko Rantanen, Alex Newhook, and then pick someone, right, to plug it. Arturi Lehkonen, the guy that we're going to talk about next, Evan Rodriguez. Pick one of those guys, and I think that is a really, really, really good top 6 that can cause a lot of problems.
Val Nichushkin is the home of my bold take for this year.
Oh boy.
Ooh, there we go.
He's the guy that I think has the kind of year where he supplants Mark Stone as the premier two-way wing in the NHL.
All right. Yeah, I can totally see it.
The premier two-way wing, offense and defense involved. I think he's got a 70-point season in him. I think he's going to push for 30 goals.
7 points is big.
I'm with you, man.
I think that the full-time role at top, I think the confidence, I think that the realization that he's just the biggest, baddest dude out there is just going to lead to a different level for him offensively. And then defensively, we already know he's exceptional. And I just think all the extra opportunity that he's going to get, the added talent and all that, and sky-high confidence and unparalleled job security is going to lead to a career year.
Well, and we talked about it with Mikko. Can you put the skill with the work ethic, and that is what Val Nichushkin embodies every single day. What he's good at, yes, he's good at it on the ice, but he works harder than everyone else on the ice, off the ice. AJ, I'm with you. I think he legitimately has that upside. Playing in this role, it seems like every time we've watched Val Nichushkin, whether it be practice, morning skate, or a game, since he signed in Colorado, I think he's gotten better every time he's stepped on the ice. And I have no reason to believe that's going to stop now.
I'm not about to stand in the way of that train.
I think he's his hardest critic too. Like, I don't want to delve too deep into criticisms of him. I look at his last season, and if he could just build on that a little bit offensively, no notes. He, in practice, was just practicing shots on an open net, and he missed one. And he got so frustrated, and he slammed his stick. And I saw Cale Makar come over, smile at him, and it got him grinning again. And I thought it was, one, really sweet teammate, Cale Makar, but also, two, just watching him get frustrated. A missed shot on an empty net just in practice feels like a low level thing to experience that level of frustration over. But I think it was in response to not having that finishing touch in the drills earlier, and it really affected him. And I don't appreciate seeing him frustrated, but I appreciate that he cares in practice.
Yeah.
MacKinnon effect rubbing off on him a little bit there.
Which you combine that with big angry Russian Val in the gym 20 hours a day. Like, cool, look, sign me up for that player.
And the reality is, look, for the most part on the Colorado Avalanche, the pressure's off this year. They did the thing. If there's someone that has pressure on them to live up to it, it's probably Val, because if he doesn't, that is an impossible hole for the Avalanche to fill this year. But for the start of the year with Landeskog out, someone that we're kind of expecting to end up on the third line down the line of this season, but the guy the Avs went out and got this offseason, and Evan Rodriguez, is at very least going to fill in the top 6 to start out this year. And what can we reasonably expect from this guy?
Speed.
Yeah.
Speed and try hard.
Yep.
I think he's going to be a polarizing guy because he creates a lot and he leaves a lot out there. But he's a guy that works hard. He gives you an honest effort in all 3 zones of the ice. You know, a true 200-foot guy where he works. He just works. Yeah. And I think that's an identity that's going to fit in perfectly with how the Avs want to just exist in general.
Yeah.
They want to bury teams with the speed and the energy and the effort. And we heard from opposing players about last year's Avs team. What was so hard about them was they just buried them in waves, came shift after shift after shift.
No time to breathe.
Evan Rodriguez, coming off of a career year in Pittsburgh, going to start the year in the top 6. We'll see where he ends up ultimately. But if he ends up on a third line next to a Ben Myers and a JT Con, I mean, good Lord.
Yeah.
My best case scenario for the Avs here is, you talked about it with, if Newhook works out, he's the how do you have an answer for this guy on the Avs second line?
Yeah.
Evan Rodriguez is just the next step down. How do you deal with that guy on the Avs third line?
He's the third line.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a Ben Myers centered third line with JT Compher and Evan Rodriguez on the wings, you just have speed coming at you. All 3 lines at that point are built around skating and speed and just an attacking mindset and play style. And I think that kind of alignment would really help mitigate JT Compher a little bit, but also give Evan Rodriguez a really good opportunity to show, hey, look, you don't need to be in a top 6 role surrounded by great players to produce.
Yeah.
You can still get this done in this job.
Well, and so you talk about like the speed coming out in waves, those first 3 lines. And oh, by the way, that would mean your fourth line features Logan O'Connor and Andrew Cogliano
and
so
Darren Helm.
Right. So it's like, cool, good luck.
All guys who are pretty fast.
But no, I mean,
and then Colorado's defense.
Yeah, I was gonna say. And
I think there might be a theme in their roster construction here.
Evan Rodriguez is a guy who his skill level just again at practice. He's just a guy who he's impressed me with his skill level. I didn't think that he was that kind of guy. He's got good vision. He's got the speed. He's got the work ethic. That's what everyone knows. He's made some nice passes. He's got some nice touch on the ice. And again, that's why if you can end this season with that third line we were just talking about, between him and JT Compher, that's some decent scoring. That's some decent offensive upside for a third checking line.
Yeah, it's a third line with a guy with a 19-goal season and 18-goal season on their belt.
Right.
Megan, I want to ask you this. We're talking a lot about him in the third line role. What do we see out of him in the top 6 where he's going to start?
Well, and I think this is why he's going to be such a good fit in Colorado is he plays with a lot of pride, but I don't think with an ego. And so I think he's comfortable. He's hungry for the minutes. I think he wants to play as much as he can and have an impact wherever he's placed. So I think he's primed for a top 6 position. We've seen him play alongside Newhook a lot in preseason, and he's looked good there. He's been a really, he is really creative with the puck, really clever with it. And so I think there's a little bit of surprise to his game offensively too, that it'll help someone like Newhook, who's a real play driver. And then you put him on a third line. I think that inspires JT Compher a little bit because, JT Compher, we'll probably talk about him in the next segment too. He's someone who also, like, in the same way that we kind of thought that Newhook and Compher and Knack were kind of this black hole line, Compher's plagued by those same types of problems too. And you put someone like Evan Rodriguez within that third line, just becomes wonderful.
Yeah. Obviously, if the production isn't there, that could be a bit of an issue for the Avs as far as him, especially at the start of the year, filling out that top 6. That's the big concern with some lack of finishing ability potentially there. But
at $2 million, it's easy to get surplus value out of it.
Right. It's hard to have a bad contract.
Well, and it's 1 year if it doesn't go well.
Yeah. And if it does, maybe you have like
a bigger relationship there.
Yeah, maybe you have a 3 or 4 year deal where he does become like your sort of in-house JT Compher replacement. Where that's the guy that if JT Compher walks, you keep Rodriguez. And they we haven't really talked about it much, but those two guys might be in direct competition for a deal from the Avs.
That's a great point.
They probably can't afford to keep both.
Yeah.
But they, if Rodriguez is able to contribute in the top 6, it'll be a thing that Compher has struggled to do in that role.
If you're fighting over which one you want to keep, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
So that's going to wrap up the Avs top 6 and this entire preview brought to you by Hassel Cattle Company. Be sure to go tune into the rest of these videos if you missed it. And since this is dropping on Tuesday, tomorrow, the season kicks off for the Avs. Hope to see you there. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. You can catch all of our content here, including pre-games, watch-alongs, and post-games. So tune into those. Until tomorrow, we'll talk to you later.